Now, my guest was filming her interview in Johannesburg, South Africa. So toward the end of the interview, she's going to get cut off because of the connectivity in Johannesburg. But I just want to let you guys know this before the interview gets started. So if you see it end abruptly, that's what it is. I hope you enjoyed the interview. What's going on, everyone? Today I'm here with Beatrice Achaleke. She's out of Johannesburg, South Africa. She is a writer and also an entrepreneur. So Beatrice, thank you for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much for having me, Phil.
So Beatrice, can you tell us just a little bit about yourself, where you was born, and how you ended up getting into Europe?
I was born in a little village in Cameroon, so I grew up partly in the village and then in Douala, which is the economic capital of Cameroon. And then at the age of 24, I traveled to Austria, where I studied and founded a family, set up businesses, and spent the last 20 years.
Okay, so when you spend your last 20 years in Europe, what was the difference between Cameroon and Europe?
Well, the difference is massive. Cameroon is a small country. There we have 260 different languages. Austria, we had just one language, German. And of course, the pace of life, it's very much hectic in Europe compared to Cameroon. And people are more friendly in Cameroon compared to Europe. And the public transportation is very much better organized in Austria than in Cameroon. So there are a couple of differences.
Okay, so you wrote a book called Follow Me to Africa, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, in that book, you chronicled your travel from Europe to South Africa. Am I right about that?
That's very correct, Phil. That's very correct. It's a kind of a life journey book because some things happened, some things did not happen right in the last 3 years in Europe. So you know when sometimes you get into a space where you have to fight for you have to conquer space for yourself, you have to fight for your rights, and then you get to a position where passion takes you to a position where you are very well recognized, but it doesn't really reflect on your bank account. So when that happens, things don't go right. And that's what happened to me in Europe, in spite of all the credentials. And so I made up my mind to write that book and then to return to Africa, where I'm very happy right now.
So when you got to Johannesburg, what was the first thing that you kind of noticed about being in South Africa versus being in Europe?
The first thing is that I was no longer visible. I could just blend in because there are many more people that look like me. People didn't ask me where I come from and when I'm going back. And I could just be. I needed not to fight to be noticed or to fight to be. I just could be who I really am, which was not the case in Europe.
Did you work in diversity and inclusion in South Africa?
I'm still working my way in there. But while in Europe, I was in the space of diversity and inclusion. I organized one of the most high-profile diversity leadership conferences in Europe over a couple of years, and a conference that brought a lot of American diversity experts to Austria. People like Carmen Smith from Walt Disney. We had people coming from Bank of America, from L'Oreal, from diversity best practice. So we had quite a lot of high-profile people coming into Vienna to those conferences. Even though South Africa is a very diverse country, it's one of the most diverse countries that I have seen. We're still talking diversity here, but I am still to get my way into the diversity space here in South Africa.
So why is there a need for diversity in South Africa? I'm just very curious about that.
There is a big need because the people here are very diverse. And even though South Africa is very diverse, we all know the past of South Africa, that it was not a country where equality was practiced. So we know that there was apartheid here, and that white people had all the privileges. So even though apartheid is officially gone since 23 years, my personal impression, looking around and just observing what happens, is that the economy is still very much in the hands of the white people, and black people are still doing much more of domestic work, doing much more of manual work. And so there is still a great need for diversity and, above all, inclusion, to really make sure that the diversity of the people of South Africa are included in the workplace and in the marketplaces, in schools and in social spaces, public spaces also, and in politics as well.
Now, does that make you feel a little angry that you are an African woman in the continent where you come from, and Europeans are running an African country?
Well, they're not necessarily European. They're white South Africans. So I find it very interesting. I find it extremely interesting to first of all observe how does it work here compared to Europe, and how can a black person like me claim space and participate. So I'm not angry. I'm just excited. I'm excited about what kind of possibilities are available. How can we approach each other, and how can we embrace and celebrate our differences instead of fighting against it? That's how I look at it.
So I brought up that question because, yes, I understand that Europeans are there and in that country, but they're not native of Africa. They just not. I mean, we all know kind of where their history goes. But the reason I'm questioning this, because my audience is, an American audience as well. A lot of times we're here in America, racist people say, well, if you don't like us treating you this way, why don't you go back to Africa? But then if, let's say, we go to South Africa, then we're seeing the exact same thing we're seeing here in America.
I think, I work very much with a concept that I call Globuntu. It tells me that we are all interconnected. And my children were born in Europe. I have European and have African. So I don't think asking people to leave a certain space where their ancestors have lived is the solution, because we need each other at the end of the day. So I just think we have to do a conversation. We have to embrace each other and get into a space where we start to communicate with each other, that we start to notice each other, that we get to know the needs of each other and connect in a positive way. I don't think being angry and leveling blame and pointing fingers at people is not the mentality or the mindset that Mandela used to abolish apartheid in South Africa. So I'm very much into what he did, into the mindset that he had to say, we are inclusive, we all belong, we need to embrace each other, we need to be better with each other, not bitter. So I don't have blame or bad feelings about anybody. I just try to find a correct way to communicate with them. I fought while I was in Europe, and I'm back in South Africa, not to fight anymore, but to learn from the lessons that I brought from Europe, from fighting, creating organizations of black women. Let me tell you, Phil, when I got to Austria, I really had the feeling that I was lost. So I started organizing black people. Then in 2004, I founded the Black Women's Community. It was the first time that a black women's organization was formed in Austria. People were really surprised. Where are they going to? Why don't they go home? But we fought to be recognized. We fought to gain our space. 3 years later, I founded the International Center for Black Women's Perspectives, and we did a lot of awareness raising in public just to enable people to understand where we're coming from, what our special needs are, and why it's so important that people discriminate us, why it's important that we get included. And in 2007, I founded the Black Women's, the Black European Women's Congress. It was the very first of that kind in Europe, which ended up with the creation of the Black European Women's Council. That council was an umbrella organization of black women in 18 EU member states. We were reaching out to almost 10,000 black women in Europe. So I did that fight in Europe, and I think at one point I want to kind of communicate, to find a way to connect life anymore.
I understand everything that you're saying, and even here in America, there definitely should be more initiatives to connect the sisters and have them get into places that they need, because the sisterhood is something that we all should promote just as much as the brotherhood as well. But the reason I was bringing up the situation with the Europeans and South Africans, that was based off of, like you said, apartheid, and also based off, even though apartheid is supposed to be over with, they still have control, even though they're like, 10% of the population in South Africa. Am I correct?
Approximately, yes.
10% of the population, but yet they control South Africa instead of the majority African population. I guess I just come from a different country, and to see things just maybe a little bit different, because why is it that they are controlling everything? They are having all the best of the resources. And even I've seen a video that I have produced out of South Africa where this guy was extremely racist to an African woman in South Africa. And it really bothered me to see that. And I'm not saying grab people and throw them out. I'm not saying that. But what I'm saying is, it is from an American standpoint, the audacity of some people there to treat African people that way.
It's definitely not correct. It's something that should not be tolerated. It's something that should not be acceptable. And there were some initiatives. Against that treatment. And still, I think, in as much as South Africans are in a minority, something that we still have to realize is that the generation of the born free are literally 23 years old today. And this is a generation that saw their parents being domestic workers all the time. Okay, so there are people some of them who grew up to replace their parents as domestic workers. So we still have to do a lot of training of South Africans to be able to be in public spaces. I'm not saying that they are not, but what I'm saying is that we still got to raise a lot of awareness to let people have the audacity, the ambition to really excel into offices. They have to go question the spaces where white people owned. Because as long as they don't go in there to question, they go in to clean, nothing will change. This is why I'm saying we need a different set of collaboration. We need to really reach out to each other. I'm noticing that white businesses, they need the black market because the majority of the population are black. So they are the people buying. And if we can go from the buying power that we have to really start influencing or making decisions that will allow us to get into the spaces that were otherwise not accessible for black people, then a lot of change may happen. If we use the purchasing power to kind of gain grounds, a lot of things may happen. Otherwise, I think we may still have a long way to go.
Now let's talk about South Africans, or just Africans in general, and African Americans. It's a lot of us here that want to make a connection with our African brothers and sisters, but how would the process go? Let's say if a bunch of us African Americans wanted to go to South Africa, can we blend in very well? How will we be welcomed if we are there?
I think it depends on how you come, on which mindset you come feeling. If you're coming on the mindset that this is Africa, this is the continent of origin, and people should accept me, you may have it a little bit difficult. You have to come like a learner, just like I came like a learner. Even though I grew up in Africa, I came like a learner because when you come like an American, people look up to you. They believe that you have a lot of money, and people treat you as such. So if you want to come and you come in a humble way and you want to learn first, not to teach Africans, I think it's one of the mistakes that we do. Even those of us who left Africa for Europe, when we're returning, we think we're coming to teach Africa. But we first have to come to learn Africa. And when you come to learn Africa, you see that there are a lot of opportunities. You meet exciting people who will take exciting spaces. It doesn't really matter what kind of business you want to do. What I want to say, Phil, is that we know that Africa holds the fastest growing economies in the world today. It's not taking media. That's so many Chinese are coming in. The second thing is that demographically, Africa is at the forefront of all other four continents. Africa has exciting opportunities for people of African descent coming back to the continent. As long as you know when to come, which country to go to, and you have the right networks, and when you have the right networks, you come with the right attitude, the right mindset, not the mindset of coming to teach Africans, because so much is happening in Africa today. And I noticed with myself that some of us who stayed in Europe, we stayed out of the continent, even though we were born here, we come back thinking that we have a whole continent. And that's when we get in difficult situations because people think, you think, no. So if you're coming to the continent and it is a continent where the future lies, I can tell anyone that, any person of African descent, the future lies here in Africa. because we are at the forefront of demographic growth. Um, uh, we know that the population of Western countries is aging dramatically. At the same time, the population of Africa is the youngest in the world. I read a piece that said by 2037, like 37% of the European population will be above 65, while 50% of the African population will be below 20, and that every 25 person in working age will be from Africa around the globe. So the future really lies here. It's a question of attitude. It's a question of how we come here to do business. Um, and I think that is the piece that I really want to drive home to those of us African or my fellow Africans who are abroad. If you were born on the continent, if you're coming, you have to come with the mindset of someone who wants to learn to understand the dynamics and the ethics of doing business in the continent before you can really set your foot here. And if you're African American, you're most welcome. But please, when you come, make sure you first take the time to understand the environment, to understand the people, to understand the market, and to understand how business operates here. If you do that, I bet you will find really good opportunities and you will have a good time here.
You know, definitely we want to get something going on in the African nation as well, and South Africa, or you got Ghana, Kenya, or many other countries at least that we are English speaking enough, or we can just automatically go in and possibly do something that would really be great for us as well. So
Yes, Phil. I can tell you, my company is called Follow Me to Africa. And one of the things that we do, besides writing books and speaking and doing training, is that we're building a network in different African countries of people who have lived abroad and who have returned and set up their own businesses. Quite a lot of people come back with a work contract, but we're not very much looking into people who come with work contract, rather to people who are coming to do business. The thing is that my company is setting up a network in countries like Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, of people who have returned into these countries and set up their business and know what the challenges are, but also the opportunities. So if any one person from the diaspora or someone of African descent wishes to come into these countries to do business, we're very, very happy to have them. To network them with our people in these countries who can really understand the dynamics in the market and some of the dynamics around relocation and around migration issues